They say Halden was never built, it was remembered. In the northern edge of the world, beyond where the maps bled white and the wind grew claws, there stood a city of carved bones and frozen fire. A city wrapped in wolf pelts and long silences. No roads led to it. No merchants traded with it. And yet it endured, like a wound the world had forgotten how to close. The people of Halden did not plant. They did not till. Their hands were not meant for soil. They fed on the old ways, the old rules, the ones whispered through blood and smoke. And at the center of it all was the wolf throne, an immense structure carved from black glacial stone, veined with something that pulsed when no one touched it. Its arms were etched with ancient sigils, half erased by time, depicting not wolves but mouths. Mouths consuming stars, mouths swallowing kings, and always, beneath them, the same inscription written in a forgotten tongue. To rule is to devour. The kings who sat upon that throne were not born. They were made through ritual, through pain, through something deeper than blood. Their names did not pass from father to son, but from predator to predator. They were chosen by the mouth beneath, the altar buried deep below the palace, a place where no echo returned. They called it the Hungering Stone. Each ruler entered it before coronation. Each emerged, changed. Their teeth grew longer. Their eyes darkened. They no longer dreamed. And once a year they fed, publicly, ritualistically, on offerings the people brought forth. Cattle, wine, gold. And sometimes, when the winter was cruelest, a person. Not by force. Never by force. No, the sacrifice always volunteered. As if something in the air whispered into their ears, turning mercy into madness. There are tales from travelers who reached Halden and lived to leave. They speak of a place where snow falls upward, where dogs refuse to bark, and where every home keeps one chair facing the door, empty, waiting for something that returns once every 7 nights. They say the people there do not weep at funerals. They howl. They say the wolves do not serve the king. They remember him. And they say that once, before the dynasty began, there was no hunger in Halden. That before the first wolf king, the land bloomed with quiet light and golden fruit. But something came from the north. Not a storm, not a beast, but a question. A question whispered into the dreams of a dying orphan. Would you eat to become king? If the answer was yes, history would forget what came before. And Halden would be born again. Not of stone, not of flesh, but of appetite. The first king answered, and the howling never stopped. Chapter 2, The First Pact. He was found in a snow swallow, a hollow carved by wind and fate, buried beneath frost and half-eaten by wolves. A boy no older than 7 winters, lips black, bones sharp against skin, and one eye frozen open. The other was gone, not plucked, but bitten. The hounds that found him did not bark. They whimpered, tails curled, and backed away. The hunters who carried him home did not speak his name, because he had none. They called him the Left Behind, and they claimed him for the firewood, for warmth, nothing more. But when the first flame touched his skin, he breathed, and the snow outside began to fall backward. He spoke not for a year, not even once. When he did, it was to a crow that perched on the windowsill during the longest night of the year. No one heard the words, only the silence that followed. A silence so thick the hearth went cold and the stew curdled in the pot. The boy was not raised. He endured. The village that took him in grew uneasy. Children went missing. Tracks led into the woods and never back. Wolves returned to the outskirts in packs unseen in a generation. The snow line crept closer, and one by one, the townsfolk whispered that the boy was not a boy, but a response to some unanswered sin. When he was 12, the village tried to kill him. They tied him to the roots of a frost oak, a tree older than the language they used to curse him, and left him with a dagger and a prayer, a mercy death. He did not scream. He did not cry. He carved a rune into the bark instead, a shape no one had seen, a spiral made of teeth. And that night, the wolves came not as beasts, but as envoys. They stood tall as men, eyes white, tails still. One bore a crown of thorns made of rib. Another had no face, only a maw. The third bled constantly from its chest, though it did not flinch. They watched the boy. He watched them back. Then he spoke the name that would be his, Grimvold, and the pact was sealed. They say he walked back to the village, barefoot, with wolves flanking him like sentries. He did not knock. He did not ask. He entered. By morning, the village was gone. Roofs collapsed, fires still burning, and not a single body to be found. Only claw marks on every door and a throne made of bones and milkstone rising from where the well had been. He was crowned there by no hand. The wolves circled him once, then vanished into the trees. And Halden was born. The first pact was never written, but its signs remain. Rule 1. The king must not be buried. His flesh must feed the land, or the land will devour his line. Rule 2. The king must eat what the people offer, and what the people offer the king must love. Rule 3. The king must not take a wife. The only union he is allowed is with the mouth beneath. This was the price, and Grimvold paid it with a hunger that knew no bottom. He built the palace not with hands, but with command. The wolves dragged stone. The snow obeyed, and beneath the throne he carved downward into the ice, into the bedrock, deeper than any had dared. There he found it, a pulse, the hungering stone, a great black vein of volcanic glass, warm to the touch, humming with words no throat could shape. He lay flat on it for 9 nights, naked and bleeding, and on the 10th, when he rose, his eyes had turned the color of old wounds. He returned to the surface with his voice changed, not deeper, but layered, as though many things spoke through him, not all human, and he declared Halden the kingdom of consumption. Its sigil, a wolf devouring a crowned skull. Its motto, to feed is to rule. He ruled for 60 years. His flesh never aged, but each year he grew colder. When he died, he did not rot. He cracked, like ice struck with flame, and from his bones rose the next king, shaped not by womb or lineage, but by the will of the mouth. This was the legacy of Grimvold, the first king of the Wolf dynasty. A kingdom without heirs, a bloodline without blood, a crown that bit back. Beneath the wolf throne, beneath the black stone palace that bled shadows into the frozen earth, there lay a cavern older than memory itself. It was called the mouth beneath, not because it was a mouth in the usual sense, but because it consumed. No ordinary hunger filled it. It was the hunger of the world's bones, the hunger for sacrifice, for legacy, for blood tied to power. The mountain itself seemed alive, breathing slow and deep, swallowing secrets like smoke. Only the kings of Halden ever dared enter the mouth. They called it their vow, a ritual sealed in silence and stained with blood. There, in utter darkness, the king knelt before the hungering stone, a shard of volcanic glass that pulsed with a heart no mortal could see. The stone was warm, almost comforting, but beneath that warmth was a promise. Feed or be fed upon. Grimvold had been the first, but no king since had escaped the curse bound to that place. The ritual began as the last star faded from the night sky. Torches lined the cavern walls, flickering against painted bones and ancient runes. The air was thick with smoke and salt, with whispers from forgotten kings who had tasted the stone and never looked the same again. The current king, a gaunt man named Einar, stepped forward. His face was pale as frostbite, his eyes hollow. He carried no crown, only a small silver knife stained with dried blood. The same knife every king used, passed down through centuries. He knelt before the stone, placing the blade across his palm, and pressed. A burning pulse surged through his veins, a wildfire licking his soul. The stone hummed louder, the cavern seeming to shrink, the shadows crawling closer. The mouth demanded, not words, not mercy, blood. Einar's hand shook, but he did not pull away. His blood dripped onto the stone, and the cavern drank. Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in, and from the darkness rose figures, neither alive nor dead, draped in wolf pelts and teeth, their eyes glowing with a hunger that mirrored the stone. They circled the king, their mouths moving in silent chants. One stepped forward and placed a cold hand on Einar's shoulder. It whispered into his ear, its voice like cracking ice. The curse is your crown. Your flesh is the feast. You are the wolf that eats, but also the prey that is eaten. Einar's breath came ragged. His body felt both heavy and hollow. The hunger rose within him, a beast clawing for release. He knew then that the pact was no longer choice. It was a sentence, and the mouth beneath was the sentence's voice. Outside, the kingdom waited. The people of Halden had long learned to fear the silence that followed the ritual. When the king returned, he was never the same. The wolves howled louder. The snow grew darker. The hunger spread. Every year, as the cycle repeated, the price rose. The king must eat, not just flesh and bone, but hope, fear, faith. He must consume his own people's souls, or the kingdom would devour itself. Legends say that those who enter the mouth and refuse to feed are swallowed whole, becoming one with the stone, lost forever in the hunger. Others say that sometimes the mouth spits back a king transformed, more wolf than man, more hunger than heart. And sometimes, just sometimes, a king refuses the curse. But no king lasts long after that. In the cold halls of Halden's palace, the walls remember the cries of the first king who dared defy the mouth. Grimvold, whose howl still echoes through the howling winds. The blood feast was not a celebration, but a sacrifice to the insatiable hunger of the Wolf King. Every year, the people of Halden gathered in the Great Hall, beneath banners darkened by time and whispered regrets. The hall was carved from black ice, lit only by flickering candles that burned with a cold flame, blue and biting. The air smelled of old blood, wet stone, and fear. At the center sat the king, Einar, his eyes hollow, his skin pale as death's own kiss. Before him, the offering. A figure cloaked in white, trembling but silent, the chosen soul for the year. The people watched in silence as the king leaned forward, teeth bared, and bit deep into the offering's neck. A howl erupted from the wolves outside, not animal, but something else, something ancient. The king's hunger was sated, but only for a time. The curse deepened, rooting itself into the very marrow of the land. The bloodline of ashes. Einar was not the first to suffer. Before him were kings whose names were lost to ash and time. The bloodline was no lineage of flesh and bone, but of curse and shadow. Each king's death birthed the next, their flesh consumed by the earth, their souls trapped beneath the hungering stone. The people whispered that the land drank their kings, and in return, it fed the wolves. It was a pact of survival and damnation. The whispering wolves. In the forests beyond Halden, the wolves were more than beasts. They were watchers, keepers of secrets, carriers of the curse. They moved between worlds, seen by few, heard by none. Their howls spoke of prophecy, of doom, and of kings yet to come. Some claimed the wolves were once men, bound by the curse to serve the mouth beneath. The crown of hunger. The crown worn by the kings was forged not from gold, but from bone and teeth. It was heavy with the weight of sins and hunger. To wear it was to bear the curse openly, to become the mouth's chosen. The crown whispered in the king's mind, promising power, but demanding sacrifice. The forbidden union. The kings were forbidden from taking wives, yet legend tells of one who broke the rule. She was a witch, a shadow in the snow, who loved the king despite the curse. Their union birthed a child, half wolf, half man, whose fate was to either break or bind the curse forever. The howling rebellion. Not all accepted the curse. A rebellion rose, led by those who sought to end the bloodline's hunger. They sought the mouth beneath to destroy the hungering stone and free the kingdom. But the wolves remembered, and the wolves hunted. The last king's silence. The final chapter speaks of a king who chose silence over hunger. He walked into the mouth beneath, refusing to feed. The earth trembled, the wolves howled, and the kingdom held its breath.